I want to start off with a brief history of history. And the reason why I want to get into that is because there are elements of history that we look at it from subjective and objective perspectives. And a lot of times we like to believe that we're coming from a perspective that is objective when in fact it's subjective. Objective questions about history are who, what, when, where, why, and how. And it's basically give me the facts, stick to the facts. And then the subjective aspects of history are more personal. So it's what can we learn from history? What does history say about me or my group? How does history inform my group's future or myself, my own future? Who's my authority on history? And what is my relationship to that authority? And it's important for us to understand that we do this as humans because when we get new information, it really shows us how we're taking that information in. Are we taking it in objectively? Are we taking it in subjectively? So I'm going to ask you some questions, and I can't see the chat right now, but I want to ask you what are some of the most critical elements of building relationships? And if you can put some of that in the chat. And if I see some answers pop up, I'll respond to those. Yep, I see a few of them spending time together. Yep, those are all really good elements of being able to build relationships. And one that, yeah, curiosity is a great one as well. Curiosity is very vital. So the other one I want to lift up, and I haven't seen it yet, is story, is understanding someone's story or understanding someone's history. Because once we understand someone's history, it's actually a little bit easier to understand where that person's coming from and their perspective. So I'm going to share a little portion of a poem that I wrote about my perspective. And it's the original poem is called I Am From Here, Nowhere, and Now Here. And I'm just going to share a little bit of an element of that poem. It says, I'm from sneaking into the children's ward of the hospital to see my little brother, and Uncle Willie making funny sounds with his mouth to let me know he was here to pick me up. I'm from a 21 gun salute at my grandfather's funeral. The sound shaking my body, the smoke rising as if it were going to join my grandfather in heaven, and the warm hands of granddaddy's friend covering my ears, telling me that I don't need to cry. And I'm from the broken promise of that last tear that I told myself I would never let fall again. I'm from both sides of the tracks, struggling during the school year, financially secure in the summer, Black experience with my mom's family, and a minority in my father's household, rendering me too Black and never Black enough for some folks. I'm from a Black man, a white stepmom, and an immigrant dad who was both and neither, and my inner identity formed in the void. I'm from countless hours alone, making best friends with books, cornflakes for multiple meals, never knowing what utility might get cut off, the smell of a borrowed kerosene heater, and my mom, brother, and me all sleeping around it. I'm from the respites when the income tax check comes, from a mother who did her best but was broken by a life of endless stress. I am from being a Black man in America trying to learn to live without looking over my shoulder. So, we're going to talk a little bit more about history. Um, Black history, we're going to be looking at it from a 50,000-foot perspective, and that is very critical to understand the elements of Black history in America in particular. Because if you're in a country where everyone's Black, it's not called Black history. It's just called history. And so we want to understand just why we look at history the way that we do. And fundamentally, it's because it's personal. Even in the field of academia, where there's no general agreement of where history falls in an area of study. There are many who say it falls under the humanities, while others believe that it falls under social sciences. And this matters because, as you might have noticed, fields of study that fall under the humanities have elements that are largely open to interpretation, whereas social sciences tend to be more fact-based or less likely to be taken subjectively. So what do? There's no way to force folks to look at history in only one way. And the best thing that we can hope for relationally is develop our capacity to witness how we are perceiving the information. And that can change for us from moment to moment. And one thing is certain, though, History is not a competition. Now, for those of you who are from my generation, you might recognize who these characters are. It's Daniel LaRusso and Johnny from The Karate Kid, but now at our older age. And if you're aware of the Netflix series Cobra Kai, yeah, Cobra Kai never dies. The great thing about that show is that it shows the story from Johnny's perspective. All my life, when I watched the story, I would say, oh man, Danny was bullied and Johnny was the bad guy. And that's the way the story is. But then you look back and you see it from Johnny's perspective, and it's like, wow, the same events have occurred and there's another perspective on it. Unfortunately, we've been taught to look at history as if it were a competition. And when we look at history as if it's a competition, we are going to be more inclined to choose sides and try to see if our side wins or loses. That's just a natural perspective. But what I'm inviting us into this morning is the awareness that history is not a competition, and that the more information we get, the better when we see it from multiple sides. There's a person named Barry Johnson of Polarity Partnerships who has a few questions that he invites people to ask when observing history, especially in the context of America. Those questions that I'll share with you are the sources of the history both from white people or people who identify as white and people of color? Is the information the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And these are questions that you hold within yourself. Is there time allowed to explore any discrepancies and to understand what has gone on throughout history that brings us closer to our ideals? And is there time allowed? And the time element is very important. Is there time allowed to explore what still needs to be done to present ourselves in such a way that we can live into our relational ideals? So now we're going to play a little bit of a game. It's called Who Said This? So who said this? History is written by the victors. And if you have an idea who might have said it, I invite you to put that in the chat. I'll only give you a few seconds to see. Caesar, that's a good idea. Roosevelt, maybe. I'll look for one more and then we'll reveal it. Oh, there we go. We have the answer. Churchill, Winston Churchill. So Winston Churchill was the person who this statement was attributed to. Ironically, and doing research, I found that Winston Churchill did not say this, that there was someone else that said it during their trial, and it became attributed to Winston Churchill. Okay, who said this? What is history but a fable agreed upon? Throw that out there. Twain. Yeah, that sounds like something he would say. Shakespeare sounds Shakespearean as well. Don't know, but that's a great quote. Oh, wow, Eric. Yep, it's Napoleon. We have some geniuses in here. Napoleon Bonaparte said this, or it's been attributed to him. Excellent. Okay, who said this? Success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life as by the obstacles which one has overcome. Let's see if a few answers pop out there. Maybe somebody's really fast at Googling. Martin Luther King Jr., good idea. Martin Luther King. All right, one more. Let's see if anybody else has an idea. All right, well, I'll go ahead and reveal it. It was Booker T. Washington. Michael Jordan, yeah, that's a good one too. But it was Booker T. Washington, founder of the Tuskegee Institute, and who someone will come across again a little bit in our presentation. Now, who said this? History is not a static enterprise, it is a relational one. And by their nature, relationships are dynamic. Therefore, history has to be dynamic. And see if you have any guesses on that one. Orwell. Yeah, Orwell's a good possibility. Anyone else? Marx. We're choosing some interesting people. Orwell and Marx. Nice. All right, one more choice, and if anyone has an idea, and then we'll throw it out there. All right, I'll go ahead and reveal it. It was this guy, and that's myself. So, and what I mean by that is when we look back at history, it is relational, it is dynamic, and it changes as we learn. And if we think of history as being something static in the past that doesn't change, then we missed out on the relational dimensions of history, which expand both within ourselves, our encounters with others, and our organizations